Thanks for joining us for Election 2019, the Las Cruces City Council District 2 Forum. I'm Fred Martino. Thanks to the NAACP, PFLAG, and the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico for co-sponsoring this event. Our format is simple. Candidates have up to 1 minute to answer each question, and they should not mention any opponent in their answer. The candidates joining us in ballot order are Tessa Aneyta Stuve, Jack Valencia, Philip VanVeen, and Jason Estrada. And joining me from the League of Women Voters, Eileen VanVeen. Thanks for being here, Eileen.
It's nice to be here. Thank you, Fred.
All right, we begin with the first question with Tessa. And what is your position on raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour?
Thank you so much for having us here today, and thank you for the question. I was a small business owner for almost 3 years, and I know that as a business owner, I want to make sure that I treat every person, including my employees, with dignity and respect. And that is reflected on how we pay our employees well. These are our neighbors, they're our families, and they're our friends. And we need to make sure that we're doing right by them as well. And so I am in agreement with the increase to the $15 an hour. But I do know that this can pose a bit of an issue with our small businesses, so I'm happy to see that we have incremental steps to help businesses accommodate this type of increase.
Ms. Aneyta Stuve, thank you very much. Mr. Valencia.
I would say it's premature to establish the threshold at $15 an hour presently. I have not seen the impacts of the recent implementation of the minimum wage here in the city and the total effects of it. Secondly, is we would need to, or I would need to have some kind of analysis provided to me before I would take that step in order to enact it. I'm not totally opposed to it. I just don't have sufficient information presently in which to adhere to an adoption of it.
Thank you. Mr. VanVeen.
Well, I think that it depends on whether we're talking about a micro increase for the city of Las Cruces or if you're talking about the state raise to $15 an hour. If we're talking about the state raise, it keeps the playing field level for everybody. But on a micro raise, on a local only, I would be opposed to it because it creates even more of a gap between our businesses in Las Cruces competing with those in El Paso and our other neighbors.
Thank you. Mr. Estrada.
On a local basis, I'm opposed to it. The only reason for that is our economy is built on small businesses locally. We're not a corporate city. It's not corporate Las Cruces, it's small business community Las Cruces. So raising it to $15 an hour will cause more unemployment rates because more small businesses will go under, and it'll also cause our cost of goods to go up. So if you got a raise to $15 an hour, it wouldn't affect you financially because the cost of everything else would go up around you. So it'd cause more harm than good at this point in our community.
Thank you.
Starting with Mr. Valencia, presence matters to the LGBTQ constituents. How would you support LGBTQ community organizations and events as a city councilor?
I would have no problem in doing that, and I support that. You go back in my time as a city council member, there was some legislation back in the 1990s in which those issues were being discussed legislatively. The city council supported an initiative. As a result of that, my car was vandalized as a result of supporting the LGBT community. And so I've stood with them through some of their pains. I will support them through efforts of making a greater awareness and education in our community.
Thank you. Mr. VanVeen?
Well, I don't think that there's a differentiation between LGBTQ or any other organization for that matter. I think they should all be supported equally. So I don't, I'm not sure where the gist of the question is going, but I would say that as far as LGBTQ goes, I wouldn't treat that organization any different than I would any other organization reaching out to the city for something. I think it's fair to treat everybody the same.
Mr. Estrada?
Excuse me, can I get the question again?
Sure.
'Cause I don't
Presence
quite
matters to LGBTQ constituents. How will you support LGBTQ community organizations and events as a city councilor?
I'd continue to support them the same way I have any other community, any other group in town. We're in a turning point in our community where we're acting like the rest of the United States and there's different groups and we're just getting divided instead of working as a team. We should have one goal for this community, that's to work together to raise the economic standard in this town and raise the quality of life here. And so each individual group will get the same exact attention that they need and deserve as being a part of our community.
Okay. Ms. Aneyta Stuve?
Thank you. The reality we know is that many of our LGBTQIA+ community are facing discrimination, and it's happening at all levels from our youth into adulthood. I will be committed to making sure that we are working with our communities to make sure everybody is treated fairly and equally, and that as, if any, are city employees, that they have protections against discrimination. And if we can, to start to look how we can help our youth and to make sure that we can offer resources or guides so that we can help with their journey that they are having.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. VanVeen, what are your ideas for addressing projected water shortages?
That's a good one. I think a couple things that need to be done. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Artesia, New Mexico, but years ago they started using gray water for watering their parks, their golf courses, that sort of stuff. And I'm talking a long time ago, probably 30 years ago. And it's been very effective for them in doing that. I think that is a good use. I think another thing we need to look at involving that is our own recycling program. Because we've set up a recycling program that says wash everything before you throw it in there. Although it's all sterilized when it's recycled, I think a lot of extra water gets used on things like that. We need to figure out a different way to do that. But again, my biggest thing is the gray water. If we can do some gray water recycling here in Las Cruces and put that water back into watering our parks and watering other places instead of dumping that gray water into the riverbed, I think that'll go a long way for helping with water problems here.
Mr. Estrada?
Well, the good thing is, well, there's no good thing about water shortage, but the good thing is we have a track record with other states that we can go off of and we can see what's worked and what hasn't worked. As opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel, we can take a look at a couple areas and counties in California, look at what they've enacted, even just as much as watering on opposite sides of the street Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or whatever the case is. We can look at their track record, look what they've done, before we dump a whole bunch of unnecessary money into trying to reinvent the wheel. I think that's the main thing we should do.
Ms. Aneyta Stuve?
Thank you. Making sure that we stay on top of water shortage is going to be very important. I do agree that we should be looking into ways to reuse gray water and working with the purple pipe system, and that we should be enforcing some codes issues to making sure that our community members are also being good stewards of our water usage.
Okay, Mr. Valencia.
My understanding is, in talking to the utility director, is that we do not have a water shortage, but we should always have conservation issues with regard to that, so that we don't fall into that category. I know in my prior service we established a water rights acquisition fund. We were very aggressive in the manner in which we acquired water rights, and I believe that the city today maintains significant water rights for us to be able to manage future growth in our community. That being said, we still need to maintain water reuse efficiencies, water conservation alternatives, and maintain a hard effort at protecting our water rights, as we've done in various water rights lawsuits that we've done. And we'll safeguard our future growth by having that available to us.
Mr. Estrada, how best should the city handle ongoing immigration issues?
Well, we got to look at this. We're running for city council. So if we're going to handle immigration issues, that starts above our heads and then funnels down. So we're kind of left with just like what happened with the asylum seekers. We kind of got it thrown onto us an emergency situation. But the way our city banded together to try to step up to the plate to help was amazing. We got to keep doing that. But as far as handling illegal immigration goes, there's a process. There's a process that we have to follow. And so it's going to come to state law and federal law as far as what we can actually do as a community to help that out. But as soon as that does come down and funnel down to us, I know any one of us on this stage will be ready to act and ready to help out like we have been before.
Okay. Ms. Aneyta Stuve.
Thank you. I'm very proud of how the city did work together to help our asylum seekers and make sure that our residents were still taken care of. In those early days, when the nonprofits were filling up with a lot of the asylum seekers, there was a call out for a couple families to be housed somewhere else because they were just not good candidates in the shelter and they had young kids. We did take in one such family for the evening to provide a little bit of comfort just until they were ready for their next journey. And I want to make sure that we continue to act with dignity and respect for all people should this issue occur again, and we need to handle it in a professional manner for both our residents and for the people that are coming across the border.
Mr. Valencia.
I concur with some of the prior comments. I was very elated that our community rallied behind this. I sit on the finance committee at the Cathedral of Immaculate Heart of Mary Church, and our parishioners really came about to assist with the asylum seekers. And it wasn't just our entity, but it was multiple entities throughout this community that we bonded together under this one area of concern. The nonprofits, rallied behind that, and they should be applauded for that. Additionally, one thing that I find interesting in the jurisdiction of the question is FEMA is reimbursing for some of these services that were provided by the nonprofits or by the cities and that. And so you look at it philosophically, with this paralyzing issue, and seeing that the federal government is rallying with money.
Thank you. Mr. VanVeen.
Well, there's no doubt that our immigration system is broken in the United States. And I agree with Jason on that it's a top, we got to start at the top to fix this and work down. It doesn't start on the city council level on fixing the immigration problem. However, in the meantime, I too am very proud of the fact that when the asylum situation came up, that our city stepped up. We took care of people. Once people are in our country, they're our responsibility to a degree. And we need to make sure we reach out. We don't want people starving on the streets or people hungry. I belong to a couple different nonprofits, or involved with a couple different. One of them I'm the president of, and we reach out all the time to people in need. And I think that we need to continue that philosophy in Las Cruces as being a very friendly city towards everybody, regardless of background or anything else. But at the same time, pressure needs to be put on Washington to work on solving this problem and getting our immigration reform done and in place so that we have a better system.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Aneyta Stuve, what steps, if any, will you take to help the city curb actual and potential gun violence?
Thank you. In this day and age, there is a shift in what violence is happening. I made sure to speak with our chief of police and be part of all of our city council and work session meetings that are addressing the gun violence, narcotics issues, and mental health issues, which we know that there is a connection. And so I want to make sure that we can work together with these different agencies and try to offer services and support to make sure that our residents are getting the help they need and they're being met with safe areas. I am a proud supporter of our service industries, including our policemen and our firemen. And I want to make sure that they have the tools needed to perform their jobs safely and with their own safety and with the safety of our residents. Thank you.
Mr. Valencia.
Well, I think drug interdiction is a main focus with regard to some of the violent crimes with regard to guns and other violence. I previously served on the Metro Narcotics Board for a number of years and saw excessive seizures of property and monies in which we were able to reinvest to try to target this drug interdiction and violence previously. In addition to that, I had the opportunity to be an approving body of building a police station, multiple take-home vehicles for police officers, giving them the necessary tools in order to address these gun control type of issues. We put computers in their cars in order to run checks and run hits on outstanding weapons and stolen cars and things of that nature. So I am a very big proponent of law enforcement. I've demonstrated with my prior record, and I will continue to do that.
Mr. VanVeen.
Well, first I'd like to say we've got both our Second Amendment and our state constitution has specific rules on guns and what we can do as a group, but I think we need to look deeper than just that and look at the root problem. In the last 30 years, the constitutions haven't changed, nor have the guns. They're the same as they were, but in the last 30 years, our gun violence has increased exponentially. I think that we need to, as a community, we've got NMSU right here in the midst of our city. We have people who can help on research. We need to research what the problem actually is. Where is the problem stemming from? What's the change over the last 30 years that has created a situation to where we now have way more gun violence than we ever did before? I think that that's an important first step anyway in looking at that, along with maybe some sensible local stuff, but it's going to take longer than a minute to go over those.
Mr. Estrada.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a proud supporter of our Constitution. So that's number one. When looking at gun control, like you said, it comes from a root point. And so when looking at gun control, I have a lot of law enforcement family members and friends. And gun control stems from mental health, drug addiction, how you were raised, gang violence, and things like that. And I think if we passed a gun control law, it's not like these bad guys or these criminals or these people that have mental health problems are going to go, oh, these guys passed the law, they're right, let us all go turn in our guns. That's not going to happen. So to take guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands just to try to help fight a couple different people that are not going to do the same is, I just think, wrong, and we should follow the Constitution on that.
Mr. Valencia, what part can the city play in addressing current problems aggravated by climate change and in planning for our best future?
Well, I think one of the first areas I would continue to look at expanding is renewable energy, solar, wind, if we can acquire some of that industry here. Looking at emission abatement vehicles. We know in the area that there's a high proportion of single driver vehicles. I would continue to support public transportation, expanding the hours of public transportation so we can get more riders on the roadway and eliminate car usage when given the opportunity. I think that puts more disposable income into households also when you're able to eliminate insurance and car payments. And so, thank you.
Mr. VanVeen?
You know, I was a kid in the 70s and got to do a little traveling around. And I don't know, some of you in the room probably can remember the cities filled with smog. It was choking smog, it was really bad. We've come a long way since then. We don't have that problem in the United States like we did before. It doesn't mean that we're there, but I think we need to be very careful about how we go about doing that. One of the pushes right now is electric vehicles. When you look at electric vehicles, as a for instance, you're looking at powering the vehicle off of fossil fuel, because that's what we use to power our power plants in New Mexico. So they're still being powered off of fossil fuel. On top of that, you've got the lithium mines that do irreparable damage to our planet. I think we need to take a step back and look at this issue a little closer and make sure that the things that we're doing to solve the problem aren't creating more problems on top of it.
Mr. Estrada?
I definitely agree with what Mr. VanVeen just said. The other thing is when you're looking at renewable energy and doing these things, that's done on a state level. What we can do on a city council level in a part of our districts is educate businesses, children, youth, schools on reuse and recycle. I remember when I was a child in middle school and high school, we had that little water droplet mascot walking around telling us to turn off our water, and how to brush your teeth for a minute and turn off the water. And we just need to go back to basics on that and teaching the children, yeah, electric cars are great, but there's so many other things that are powered by fossil fuels. And so we just got to educate businesses on solar, educate kids on reuse and recycle, and put a lot more monies into doing that. We definitely have the time and we definitely have the money in our community to do that. So I think that's step number one.
Ms. Aneyta Stuve.
Thank you. This summer, I joined hundreds of other mothers and children up in DC, where we advocated for clean energy usage and for our federal level to take climate action seriously. And that is the type of passion that I'm going to bring to our local government. We can work on ways to help have reusable energy, whether it's building new buildings with the city, making sure that they have solar on them, or educating, like you said, our children and youth to know how to do simple things like recycling and doing it as clean as possible so it's able to go to its final destination, and making sure that we are trying to make public transit accessible so that we are using our vehicles less and people are wanting to bike or walk. But to do that, we also need to make sure that we have complete streets and that it's safe for everyone to do. So it is intertwined, but there are some things that we can do at the local level to help improve in each area. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question in our forum now, and we begin with Mr. VanVeen. Mr. VanVeen, how best can the city address the need for more affordable housing?
You know, a big part of that is going to be working with the building community in Las Cruces. I think that that's something that we're lacking in very bad. There's many in the building community, you know, feel like that the city has put so much regulation on them that they're stifled and they're stuck. But if we could get the building community and the city to working together on building affordable housing, it'll go a long way. I've been involved with a couple of housing projects myself where we've done affordable housing programs where different businesses, including my own, have volunteered the time to go in there and do that. But in order to get the builders behind that, you're going to have a better relationship with them from a city level.
Mr. Estrada.
I think that housing is actually affordable in our community. I don't think that any of the builders that we have, which are great builders and great home builders here in this town, are going in saying we want to build houses that are unaffordable, because then they would be out of business. Houses are affordable. It starts back at grassroots. Our economy isn't able to function right now. We don't have enough money coming in. Our wages are low. We have a high unemployment rate. And so it starts there. Housing is affordable here. We just got to create the economy around it to help it succeed and be able to purchase homes and move into, just basically raise your social standard. And so we need to start there, growing the economy. Housing's affordable. Ask people from California that are moving in how affordable our housing is. So I don't think any of these builders are coming in trying to gouge people or make housing unaffordable and not sell their properties. So we need to focus on the economy.
Thank you. Ms. Aneyta Stuve.
Communication and collaboration are going to be very important. As we look forward, having those conversations with builders, with not only our local agency, but state and county, on making sure that we're addressing the needs of our residents and that we have different types of housing available for different income levels are going to be really important. And I'll make sure to be part of those conversations and advocate for our residents here in District 2 and for all of Las Cruces.
Thank you. Mr. Valencia.
Well, I would look at the various impact fees that initially that are assessed to a permit. Previously, through collaboration and consensus, we were able to establish an impact fees committee with builders and suppliers and a multitude of that, and we were able to reach a favorable outcome that the building community embraced and moved forward during a lot of the growth of Sonoma Ranch. And look at the $1 billion of infrastructure that has been invested in that area. So we need to look at infill opportunities first, where lines are already running by the roadways and that, so it isn't as impacting to the utility budget and or the people who are paying for these impact fees and licensing fees. I'd also work with banks and lending programs in order to bring affordable housing more favorable in the lending aspect of it.
Thank you. We want to thank all of our candidates who are running for District 2 for the Las Cruces City Council: Tessa Aneyta Stuve, Jack Valencia, Philip VanVeen, and Jason Estrada. Thank you at home for watching. District 4 is coming up next, and thanks to Eileen VanVeen of the League of Women Voters of Southern New Mexico, the NAACP, and PFLAG. I'm Fred Martino.